It is weird. And I know, because I was just re-reviewing your form again, and I know that you described yourself as a theater geek. And periodically, I go through deep YouTube rabbit holes on Stephen Sondheim.
Oh boy, Stephen Sondheim.
I know.
I mean, he's my. Are we recording now? Or
oh yeah, it's all going in. Oh. It's all going in, but it's going to get edited down to the best parts. So
Stephen Sondheim, you're a big Stephen Sondheim fan?
I mean, I love musicals as much as the next guy, which I don't know how much that actually is. But so I think of. There's a handful of like creators that I think of as my lifetime of study people. So like Tolkien is like that, never going to get to the bottom of him, right? Cormac McCarthy is like that, never going to get to the bottom of those novels. And I feel like Sondheim is kind of one of those. And I haven't even consumed most of his musicals, but the interviews, like the big interviews, like the Inside the Actors Studio and some of the other long form interviews on YouTube, I've watched over and over again.
Of him?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a revelation to me when I was a teenager and in college, and I just consumed all of his musicals. And they were unbelievable to me. I started with Into the Woods, and just the fact that he basically upends our expectations of how fairy tales end.
Yes.
And it was just what a wonderful musical that was. And then I, delved deeper. And I mean, some of his stuff, Sweeney Todd, You Can't Beat Assassins. I mean, what a great idea for a musical. You get all the people who have tried to kill or killed presidents over the course of American history, and they get to sing their song. It's wonderful. He's a giant.
Just incredible. I mean, one of the magical people, I feel like. It's funny you mentioned Into the Woods because I just watched, there's like a behind the scenes sort of with him, and is that a Lapine, I think, did the book, maybe?
I believe so.
But he talks about, he's at the piano, and sitting at the piano is just amazing. And his teaching, too, like, I don't know if you've seen where he teaches Not Getting Married and My Friends from Sweeney Todd. There's just these little 10-minute clips from the 80s probably of him teaching theater students how to perform his songs.
Yeah, you have to act his songs. And if you go down those rabbit holes, I don't know if you've encountered Elaine Stritch Elaine Stritch. She sings, he used her a lot in his musicals like Company, and she was famous for her song, The Ladies Who Lunch, and she acted the heck out of that song. And, she had, I don't know if she had a great voice. She had a very gravelly voice, but she was an actor, and she would do these great songs, and she was amazing. So you have to be a good actor to do Sondheim.
Yeah.
Even though it's musicals, it's really, you got to be a good actor.
Yeah, definitely. The Into the Woods part that I love from that documentary is him talking about what I think you were just describing about upending the traditional notion of the fairy tale, which is it starts with Once Upon a Time, but then there's that stab on the piano, which, like he explains, sort of jars the audience out of the lull that Once Upon a Time typically lulls you into.
Right.
Just, what a genius.
Yeah, true genius.
Yeah, unbelievable. But the reason why that came up is because in talking about the podcast, because I haven't done this in 10 months, so we're going to see if I remember how. But in Inside the Actors Studio interview, he talks about the conventions of the theater and how, and this relates to drama and what we do in English 1020, I think. It relates to sort of the artificiality of the theater in terms of, the lights go down and there's staging and it's clear that we're in a thing. And he talks about how everything in the theater conspires to make it false, but it's the actor's job to make it true for the audience and to make it a real thing.
Yeah, I like the obvious artificiality of the theater. It's even if it's a realistic play, we all know we're there, and it's a communal event because of it. So the actors are doing their thing together, but the audience, they're part of it too. And I used to do a lot of acting when I was growing up in schools and high school, college, and a little bit after, and no performance was the same because of the audience. And so you're part of this larger communal experience, and some of the greatest experiences of my life in terms of like transcendence have been in the theater, either on the stage or in the audience, or it's a very special art form.
Yeah, so cool. I always say in class that every production is an interpretation. I should say every performance is an interpretation.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting as a form of literature because you read it, you can read the text, and that's all well and good, and that's what we do, for example, in English 1020. But as soon as you try to put it onto stage, the director has their vision, the actors have their vision, and it'll change through time periods. And you don't know where to focus your gaze. Do I look at the text? Do I look at the director? Do I look at the actor? Do I look at the time period? Do I look at the audience and what they're doing?
Yeah.
So great art form.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like as I was driving in today, I just was reminded of that Sondheim quote about how everything conspires to make it false. And the actors have to make it true, because so much about the podcast format kind of conspires to make it false. It's like there's microphones and this is, it's being recorded and everything. And, I, as the host, ostensibly have to make it seem like totally natural and that I'm not hyper aware of every single detail. So
what is up with the rise of the podcast in recent years? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I don't know. I've been listening to podcasts since 2009 at least. And the reason, I may have told this on the show before, the reason why it came up was because I was living with my dad in Rocky Hill and driving to Southern, where I did my master's degree, and I was working there during the day. So I had like a 45-minute commute Monday through Friday, and, I had my NPR phase, as one does, but then I just happened to discover podcasts, and I realized that there were shows that I could choose to listen to on a regular basis, as opposed to just tuning in to what was on the radio. And I've been listening to them ever since. It's actually only now, especially in the wake of my sabbatical, that I've started to dial them down a little bit and lean much more into music in the car, especially because it has, it's hard to, because it seems like an innocuous thing. Like you're listening to podcasts and people are talking about informative or interesting topics or even just entertaining topics, but it's still an input for me. And so when I'm listening to other people talk, I'm listening to what they're saying, but it's difficult for me to have my own thoughts or process my own stuff while I'm intaking information. Whereas music, I can much easily, especially leaving campus, it's much easier for me to tune the music out to whatever degree I feel like I need to so that I can process what happened in class that day or whatever the case is. So, yeah, I don't know. Podcasts are
interesting format.
Yeah. Do you listen to any, or are you familiar with them?
Well, it's funny. I finally pulled the plug on cable a few years ago because it's just, how many hundreds of dollars do we need to spend per month for thousands of channels that we don't watch?
Yep.
So that was a big transition. But I don't know what to watch anymore. So, you go to Netflix or HBO or this and that, but I find I go on YouTube and I watching some of these random podcasts, and I don't know, you get to know some of them, but I don't really have any favorites, but it's interesting. I kind of go more and more I find myself watching YouTube and podcasts, people talking about various topics.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing, I think, with podcasts is that it's not even about the topic so much. It's about the voices, and it's about you just kind of become, not to invoke the concept of parasocial relationships, but you kind of become friends with these podcasters, in your head, and you get to know them. And so that's really, they could talk about anything. You just kind of show up to hear what they're thinking about that particular week. YouTube is my vice, though, in terms of, because I don't have any social media on my phone or really on my devices, but the YouTube rabbit holes I can just get.
I know. I've really gone away from social media. I just concerned by what it's been doing to our larger world. The idea of it tried to bring everybody together, but I just can't help but think that a lot of our polarization is because of social media. Sometimes it feels like it's ripped apart the social fabric in part. And I've, as a result, moved away. I'm not really on social media at all anymore. But it is addictive. Like when I was on Twitter, which then became X, just the way they designed it, I'm like, it's almost like you're at a slot machine. And it just, again and again, I thought, this is not healthy. And then I was on TikTok for about a year. And that was truly frightening because of what that did to my mind. And so I don't know who's designing these algorithms, but it's frightening stuff because for whatever reason, you can just scroll. You could do it for hours.
Infinite.
I was on a flight to Europe a little over a year ago. It was like a 9-hour flight, and the woman in front of me, she was on TikTok the whole time, and she wasn't bored. It was because she was on TikTok, and 9 hours went by, and I thought, wow, this is interesting. No one has to be bored anymore, which, good and bad. But TikTok, after about a year, I couldn't finish a sentence reading. It was wrecking my reading comprehension. It was ruining my attention span. And I thought, I can't be on this anymore. So I had to get rid of it. But very interesting with the YouTube, I don't know if this is a new thing, but on my phone, I used to not do this, but now they do those scrolling short form videos on the YouTube. And the research is coming out now that I was just reading about a few weeks ago. These short form videos are not good for anybody's mind. I mean, it's coming out in terms of our reading comprehension and our attention spans. And so I don't know how we break apart from all that, but maybe we just can't go back. But it's concerning.
Yeah. Oh, man, I could do a whole hour on everything that you just said. I feel like I was on a flight last weekend, and on this particular leg of the flight, I was in an aisle seat, and this flight or this plane had device holders on the back of the seats, which for a long time I couldn't figure out what these things were until I saw somebody else using it. And you can just mount your phone on the back of the seat, and the person across the aisle and a couple rows in front of me had their phone up and was just TikTok the whole way. It was only a couple-hour flight, fortunately, but I watched their phones TikToks the entire time.
Yeah.
And I had work to do.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of the books I read on sabbatical was Filter World, which is about the algorithm. And yeah, it's really just insidious.
Well, it is. And, I like to read and consume different topics. And sometimes I think it thinks it's smarter than it really is. So, for example, if I read an article about AI in the workforce on Apple News, because they have their own algorithms too, then from then on, every For You recommendation is about AI and the economy. And so every day I get articles about it. I'm like, I don't really want to be inundated with this every day.
Yeah.
And I can't escape it. And YouTube thinks it's so smart too, but it's like, I have other interests. It's annoying.
Yeah, YouTube knows what I like for sure. But then that becomes your reality.
Yes.
Because it's like you're scrolling through YouTube and like everybody seems to be talking about the end of civilization in this way or that way, and you start to internalize that, and it becomes a kind of mind control, I feel like, because that becomes your reality.
Yeah, it amplifies everything, not in a good way.
Yeah. It's bleak.
A little bit. Sometimes it's a little bleak. I mean, as soon as you understand what's going on, it's wonderful when you can break away.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm not on Facebook anymore. I haven't been on Facebook in like a year. I don't go on Twitter or X or whatever it is. I'm not on TikTok anymore. So I'm able to pull away. And then I, too, found recently that I'm kind of being drawn into YouTube, but I'm aware of it. So, and I think our students are aware of it, too. I think a lot of them are making conscious choices to try to pull away to a degree. They know. I think many of them know that sometimes our relationship with these devices and these forms of media, it can be unhealthy.
I think so too. I think they are much more cognizant of it than we might typically think. The insidious thing for me is that there's never it just has become a default action to go to YouTube. It's not like I'm specifically going to look something up on YouTube. It's just that I know if I go to YouTube, there will be multiple things that I would like to click on. And so it becomes a default action whenever you have any sort of downtime.
Yeah, no one needs to be bored anymore. No one can daydream anymore. No one can dream about anything. That's problematic to me.
Yeah, which is why I have leaned only more heavily into paperback books and the act of writing without technological tools and that kind of thing, and listening to music and going on walks without listening to anything and stuff, because I think it's only becoming more important as our technology becomes more and more omnipresent.
Absolutely. And I think there's going to be a growing number of people who are very consciously doing that, unplugging, and maybe there'll be schools that will form of people. Everyone who's in the school will be committed earnestly to the idea of unplugging and doing things old school. That would be interesting.
I think so. It's always a comfort to me because I read an article on sabbatical about the opposite. I think it's called Alpha School. No shade to any particular organization, but it's one of these, how would you describe it? One of these AI-driven, totally individualized learning. Every student is just in front of a screen the whole day, and the algorithm determines, well, you understand this, so we'll go to this question, and vice versa. And I'm sure for some students it works, but I have to imagine that most people, this is what has preserved my soul in the AI apocalypse, is that I still feel like most people who come to college especially come in part because they want human connections with teachers, but also just with peers about these things. So I haven't given up total hope yet.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about with that Alpha School, and they have the kids do it for like 2 hours a day, and they're saying that's enough.
Oh, right. Yes, just the 2 hours.
Yeah, and the teachers aren't really teachers. They're more like supervisors of what the AI is doing with the kids. Yeah, a little concerning, but you see where this is going, and I think there's going to be more of that coming down the pike.
Yes. This is great. You want to get started?
You haven't been recording?
I'm recording the whole time.
okay.
I'm going to do the introduction.
I'm like, we got some material here.
I know, great material. This is why I was so excited to have you on, because I've been thinking about this episode really since I started the podcast, and so we'll see if I get to a fraction of the stuff. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think I'm probably not going to try to get this out before spring break, because I'm really drowning in papers right now. I don't know if you are.
Yeah, a little bit. I have listened to it, and I noticed that you do like hyperlinks to topics of conversation.
The show notes, yeah.
Yeah, so that must take time.
That takes a little while. Yeah, it's pretty much any proper noun that comes up. I have to go hunt down a link to and post it. I don't know if anybody looks at the show notes, but there are show notes.
I have. I mean, I've looked at it. It's a very interesting format. So
thanks, Todd. I'll do the intro, and then we'll just resume what we were talking about. What is the intro? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Flow Down. This is a podcast featuring conversations with Three Rivers students, faculty, and staff. My name is Andrew Marvin. I teach English at Three Rivers, and my guest today is Dr. Todd Berry. Todd is an English professor, Phi Theta Kappa advisor, theater geek, and level 2 mediator. Todd, thank you so much for being here today, right before spring break.
Oh, thank you so much. Meditator, level 2 meditator.
Meditator. I was going to say mediator. I don't really know what that is. I have a better understanding of what a level 2 meditator is, but how does that work in your particular meditation system?
Well, by saying I'm level 2 is my way of saying that I'm still a beginner, but not quite a novice. Yeah. So I've taken up meditation in the last few years, and it's been wonderful. So like I just recently did a half-day meditation, silent meditation retreat. And I was worried beforehand, oh gosh, am I going to be able to be quiet for half a day? Am I going to be bored or this? And I thought I did pretty great. I could have gone the whole day. I'm going to look for multi-day silent retreats. I did there's all sorts of apps out there that can teach you how to meditate. And I used one a couple of years ago. And I think it kind of got me on my way. It's been demystified for me. Mm-hmm. So I'm starting and I'm feeling more comfortable. I don't do it every day. But it's been wonderful to start to explore meditation, mindfulness, that kind of thing.
That's awesome. One of the things that I was thinking about on my way in was about how much I had been looking forward to this episode. And I think that's in part because I feel like Todd and I are both just looking for a quiet life. And so it kind of surprises me that you thought it might be challenging to do a half-day silent retreat, because I've thought about doing those things as well. But yeah, it's very intriguing. So is it a specific, like, is it transcendental meditation, or is it Vipassana meditation, or?
Oh goodness, I'm just level 2, Andrew. I don't know. Would we go up to level 20 or 30? I don't know. I guess it's mindfulness meditation. I don't know. I did the app Waking Up. It's run by Sam Harris. Very well done. I think it's mindfulness, but there's Buddhism sprinkled in there. Who knows? I'm such a beginner. I could never teach anyone how to do it right now, but the following the breath, that kind of stuff, and letting your thoughts come and go. And it's just been very helpful for me. I mean, the mind, I think, needs to be trained at some point. Like at some point, a lot of your thoughts, my thoughts can become unhelpful. As I get older, it's like, do I really need to be thinking this? And I'm going to let this go. And, the pandemic was a rough few years for a lot of people. And then, for me included. And by the end of it, I just wanted to quiet my mind a little bit. And the meditation's been great to take up.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like, I'm sure I've said this in the podcast before, but my yoga teacher says that the people will say that meditation, they want to learn to meditate so they can turn their mind off. But she would say that that's not possible. I mean, the mind's job is to think. So the goal of meditation is not to turn your mind off, but to learn how to focus it on one thing productively.
Yeah.
Which I think
Sounds
is only...
or whatnot.
Yeah, or your breathing, or your feelings or whatever, and just noticing them without judging them and without believing them. I always think of that. I forget who initially said it, but do you believe your thoughts?
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to believe your thoughts.
Yeah. And there's a line from Shakespeare. I don't know if it's from Hamlet, but there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. I mean, just because you have a thought doesn't mean that you need to run with it and believe it, as you said. You do yoga? I've been experimenting with that, getting into that. That's great practice, too. Yeah,
I did it for about 10 years, I think, roughly... Yeah, probably 2010-ish to 2020-ish. And then we had online classes for a long time during the pandemic. And then my teacher retired. And so the past few years, I haven't done it as rigorously as I used to do, but I still consider it very formative to my identity.
Yeah, I'm getting into that. I mean, nothing big, but I'm just starting to explore yoga. It's very interesting.
Yeah. I always think of you, I have always thought of you as one of the adults in the department. But I don't think that you started that much earlier than I did. When did you start at Three Rivers?
I started as an adjunct in 2010. And then I started full-time in 2012, which was just a few years before you.
There you go. That's 2 years ahead of my schedule because I was adjunct 2012, full-time 2014.
Yeah, I mean, we've been here a while now, Andrew.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm almost 50 years old, and I don't know where the last 16 years have gone. But yeah, I guess I'm probably a little older than you, maybe about 10. How old are you, Andrew?
I'm going to be 39 in 4 days.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I'm going to be 48 in a few months. So I'm Gen X.
Okay.
You're not Gen X. You would be millennial.
No, I'm a millennial. I forget. I feel like I don't know if it's either early or late millennial, but I was born in 87.
Okay.
So it's definitely millennial, but I think it's not in the middle of the generation. It's sort of toward one end or another.
Yeah. But yeah, our lives are ticking by here. It's a great place to work, though. We've been here for a couple decades now, haven't we?
Isn't it the best?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I've said this before, but it just, being on sabbatical for 4 months and not having the classroom part was so profound and not in a way like, oh, I'm dreading coming back, because I was like desperate to come back because I really thrive on the teaching energy, as I have said numerous times. But yeah, just so grateful to be here. And again, this was I want to get to how you arrived here in a second, but this was my first academic job out of graduate school. So I've been here. This has been my home, the whole time. So I still can't believe it. How did you arrive at Three Rivers as an adjunct in 2010? As far back as you want to go, what led you here?
Oh boy. Well, how did I arrive here? That's a good question. I mean, your journey to where you end up for the long haul, I think, is always circuitous. So, I mean, if we take a step back, just one removed, it would be I was in grad school at UConn, and I was looking for a little bit of extra money, and I started adjuncting here to see what it was like, and I loved it. And then, I was local, and my husband works in Connecticut, and we didn't really want to do a national job search. So I was in UConn trying to get my PhD, and I think, as you well know, the job market for PhDs in English is a little bit rough. And so had I known how rough it was going to be, I don't think I would have done it. But anyway, I was halfway through it, and I realized, oh boy, it's going to be hard to get a full-time job as an English professor, especially if I don't want to do a national job search. And I didn't, because I really wanted to stay local. So I realized that I really only wanted to, because of my relationship and starting a family and this and that, I really wanted to stay local to Connecticut. And so as grad school started to culminate in a degree, and I realized my time was running out, I started to look for a job, and I started, this adjunct position opened up here, and then a full-time job opened up, and I went for it, but I didn't get it the first time it came up. And so, meanwhile, getting closer and closer to the degree, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then it came up again, and it was a 1-year position, and I went for it. The competition to get these jobs in English is unbelievable. And it's really a shame how hard it is to establish an academic career now. So I just feel really lucky that it all worked out, and that ultimately I was able to get onto the tenure track here and become more established. But that's how I ended up here. I mean, and then, we can go back for even further. I mean, how do you end up any place? I mean, before that, I went to law school. I went to UConn Law School. I became a lawyer. I'm actually licensed to practice law in the state of Connecticut. And I mean, I never practiced because I went immediately into my doctorate program in English. Sure. But and now I'm officially retired because I didn't feel like paying the yearly thing or whatever. Okay. But I mean, I went to law school. I spent 3 years studying law. I come from a long line of lawyers, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll be a lawyer. I mean, after I graduated from college, I had a few forks in the road, and one of them was, maybe I should go to law school, or maybe I should go to English grad school. And I went to law school, and then halfway through law school, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. And then I took a course called Law and Literature, which was just a revelation to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. You can look at the intersections between law and literature. And there are many. So the reason I ultimately I first chose law school over English, because I thought, law is going to be literature that matters. Law is going to be the capital T truth. And I like language, but law is going to be the language that matters. And I quickly realized that law, it just deals with similar things that people do when they're interpreting literature. And that's kind of what law is figuring out how do you interpret this language. And I just enjoy the emotional resonance of literature more. But I love thinking about the connections between law and literature. So when I was in law school, I took this course in law and literature, and I had this great professor, and he had a PhD in English. And I thought, well, this is interesting. And I started to look into that field, and I thought, I'm going to be a law and literature scholar, or whatever that means, right? And so I had this vision of, okay, well, I'll get my PhD in English, and then I'll teach at a law school or a Research One university, and I'll be in the field of law and literature. And it's all well and good, but life takes all sorts of twists and turns. And so when I ended up here, and I realized I didn't want to do a national job search, and I realized I actually liked teaching at a community college, and then the job opened up and I went for it. I'm like, I'm totally happy being here. And I love it because I don't have pressure to publish or anything. And I don't have much more to say on some of those scholarly topics anyway.
Sure.
So I'm totally happy just to be, full-time teacher, which is kind of what we're doing here at a community college. And so that's how I ended up here. Long road. It's interesting, all the different things you do in your life. When I graduated from college, I was out in LA for a year because I did all that acting when I was in college and before, and I'm like, I want to make it big in Hollywood. And went out with my college roommate. We lived in Hollywood, and then I saw how rough it is to get out to make it there. And so I worked at a talent and literary agency in Hollywood, and I thought, wow, this isn't for me. I thought, maybe I'll go in through the back door and become like a media mogul, down the road, and then, make myself the star of films or something. But it just wasn't for me. And LA is so different from Connecticut because I grew up in Connecticut. So I was back, and then I worked in book publishing for a couple of years. I worked at Simon & Schuster in Manhattan, and that was interesting. But, book publishing is different than writing books and reading books. So that really wasn't for me. So from there, I hopped into law school, and I just gave you that description of how I ended up in grad school and how I ended up here. So how did I end up here? I have no idea, but I'm here, and there's not going to be any more career changes, God willing. And happy to be here for another 15 years or so, God willing, and here I am.
That's amazing. I could respond to so many things that you just said. It seems like, though, you're more, because I knew about the law background, and I wanted to dig into that a little bit. It seems like we're perhaps a lawful lit professor more so than a literary lawyer at this particular point in time.
A lawful lit professor?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be right. Lawful lit, as opposed to a literary lawyer? Yeah. I definitely value literature more than law. It's just so funny that when I talk about critical approaches to literature, and I sometimes I feel like the students, their eyes glaze over and they think, well, this is kind of ultimately silly. And if I remember, I try to connect this idea of critical approaches to literature back to law. I say, just these questions that literary critics ask, well, what should we value? Should we value the text? Should we value the intent of the author? Should we value the historical context? Should we value X or Y? These are the same questions that lawyers and judges ask. What do you think the Supreme Court justices talk about and argue about in their opinions? What's the best way to interpret the Constitution, the highest law in the land? Well, do we value the original intent of the framers? Do we look at historical context? Do we look at where we are now? Do we look at what the words mean? Same thing. These are important questions. So when you talk about what's at stake in critical approaches to literature, my answer is everything. Everything. How we structure our world, how we structure our reality, our individual reality here and in our community, but also our larger society. So language and how you interpret language is like one of the more fundamental things that we have going for us as humans, which is why in part I'm a little concerned that we've now created this technology that is starting to master language.
Yeah.
Because whoever masters language has access to power.
Yes. In terms of the critical approaches, because I know this has come up periodically in our department meetings, the degree to which, because for our purposes, and your PhD, is it just a PhD of English, or was it a specialization in literature? In
English, drama. My specialty
is
20th century drama. But
okay, cool. So, but primarily for our purposes, we're mostly teaching English 1020 with the occasional 200 level course if we get the opportunity to do that. So I know we've talked many times in the department over the years about the degree to which we incorporate literary theory into the classroom. And I'm reading the current edition of one of my graduate school textbooks, which is Beginning Theory by Peter Barry. Just like a couple pages a day, just because I have gotten to the point where I feel like, for me, the literature that we read is so rich that English 1020 students have plenty to wrestle with, just there. So are you still incorporating active literary theory instruction into your 1020, and what does that look like? Because I can't imagine.
No, I do. I approach it as interpretive lenses.
Okay.
Just in a very superficial sense. I don't think you really need to get into the weeds. So if you look at the back of our Norton Intro to Literature, which I think you teach out of in 1020, that's pitched at a pretty high, almost like a graduate school level. And I don't think that's really helpful for anybody. So I don't think it's important to get into the weeds with all the different kinds of literary theory. But I do think it's important to understand the differences between the main critical approach to literature. So do you care about the text only, the formalist approach? Do you care about authorial intent, what the author intended, or how it might relate to their life, biographical? Do you care about how it might connect to its historical context, historical? And then maybe a couple other approaches, gender or psychological, maybe reader response. But just how, when you put a lens up in front of a text, how it colors what you come up with, that's all I think is important to think about and meditate on.
Yeah, I know lenses has been your word over the years, and I think that's a great approach to it, because I think it does open up the text for students in a lot of ways, because I think it's easy for some students who maybe are not as familiar with literature to, read it once and then be like, I don't know, what the heck am I supposed to write about this thing? But just having the ability to look at it from this perspective and this perspective and this perspective can, open it up in a lot of different ways that they might not even be aware of going
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's where I leave it.
Cool. You may have already addressed this in your earlier answer, but I wanted to ask semi-early on, what is the value of literature to you? I know you talked about the value of language, and so maybe that covers it. But especially now, being such a technology-obsessed sort of culture, what role do you feel like literature continues to play, either for you personally or for all of us?
Oh boy, that's a big question, Andrew.
Thank you.
Yeah. What the question is, what do I value about literature? What's the role of literature?
Yeah. Well, either or I think is fine. Like maybe for you personally. Now, let's not worry about everybody on the planet. But what do you think? What is the value of it for you? Why does it continue to be meaningful to you? Because it would be so easy. Like for me in my reading practice, I really have to carve out the time to sit for 30 minutes with the cats and the coffee to read in the morning. And it would be a lot easier to not do that, because there's plenty of other stuff I could do. So what is, if you have something like that, or what is it that keeps, how would you argue?
What are we looking for when we read capital L literature, I would say? Like I've always been entranced with that idea of capital L literature. When I was coming up through school, all the Penguin classics would have these black bindings, and I was so entranced by the way they looked, and in the back they would have all the other classics involved, and I was like, what would happen if I read all those classics?
What would happen?
Yeah, what would happen? What would you encounter? What would you get? And then I encountered a book, which was I ended up realizing was actually kind of controversial when I realized that when I was in grad school, but when I was in high school, I didn't realize it was controversial, and that is a book called The Western Canon by Harold Bloom. And I mean, what a project this man undertook when he actually tried to create the list of the greatest books ever written in the Western tradition, from like the ancient Greeks or before to now, across the transatlantic, Western world. And when I read that book, I thought, wow. First of all, how do you read all that, right? But I thought, what would happen if I, too, read all those books? Like, what will I have access to? Will it be capital T truth? Or will I become a better person? Or what will happen? And, well, that's the question of one of the bigger questions of my life, Andrew. I mean, I did a lot of reading when I was coming up in school, and I now have this kind of open question about where it has left me. Did I get capital T truth? No, I didn't. Which is why I guess maybe I don't read quite as much anymore.
Yeah.
I also think just the way our world's changing, it's. I don't think a lot of people read as much anymore. But I think there is incredible value in meditating on works of literature, in taking your time with short passages, and I think when you get there, you can have glimmers of what it is about being a human being that's worth thinking about, and you maybe can understand connections with others, and you maybe feel less alone. I think there was a quote also by Harold Bloom, something to the effect of, we read to come to grips with our own mortality. I mean, you go to great books for a little bit of wisdom. I mean, I guess that's another, larger question is, maybe you go to literature for a little bit of wisdom, whatever that is. Maybe it's not truth, but maybe it's wisdom. And there's something to be said about that. It can provide you solace as you get older and encounter challenges in your life. And I think when in doubt, some of the great books do have things I hesitate to use that word teach, but yes, they do teach you. I always say to students, don't go to literature for life lessons. I mean, there's other texts to go to for that, maybe religious texts or something like that. I mean, good literary texts just give more questions, but they also can give an impression about just what it is to be a human being, which is kind of what we're all doing here. And also I say, in terms of literature and interpreting literature, I think it's important to interpret literature because it's important to be able to interpret your own life. If you go through your life with a superficial set of interpretations of what's going on around you, you're going to have a superficial life. But through literature, you can learn to not just interpret what's going on in literary text, but you might have a richer human experience because you might be able to see what's going on in interesting, different ways in your own life. I mean, I hope you're the protagonist in your own life, but I hope you understand what the conflicts are in your life and what are the various antagonists in your life and how do you overcome various conflicts in your life? What are the themes of your life? Do the themes change over time? Hopefully they do. How would you articulate the themes of your life? And if you can do that in interesting ways and original ways, I think you're going to have a richer life.
Yeah, I don't even need to be here, man. Jeez. So much that I could respond to. Again, I love that you said that you read all these great books, capital G, capital B books, and at the end feel like you didn't have a sense of the capital T truth, which I think makes total sense because I always think about, I don't read much nonfiction. I had a huge streak of nonfiction as part of my sabbatical project, but I always think about how, books in part, or writers, in part, one of their priorities is to sell books if that's your primary job. You're in the publishing industry, right? So I think a lot of books, maybe not capital L literature so much, although one of my graduate school courses, which was Poe, Hawthorne, and Melville, was one course, which was all about the marketplace and how these, the author of Moby Dick was also trying to make a living by selling Moby Dick. But I always think about how, a lot of books want you to think they contain the secrets. I think I'm mostly thinking of like self-help stuff. They want you to think that if you just bought this, you would have the secret and you would be a happier person. Right. And I have read books that I do feel like contain secrets of some kind. But I love that you said that literature didn't actually give you the capital T truth. But I think that you're exactly right, that it equips you to discover. I mean, it's like we talk about with writing instruction, is that you want to show the reader, don't just tell the reader, And so I think that reading literature does equip you to interpret your own life as opposed to just telling you what your life means.
Yeah.
It does equip you to do it for yourself, which is all we want for our students.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But I would just say that I didn't find the truth in law either. Clearly, because I decided not to practice law. So you have to find truth in different ways. Or maybe you might find the truth, but then it'll shift as you go forward and you got to find it in a different way. Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge, it's funny because Harold Bloom is also a source of YouTube rabbit holes for me. And I think there's plenty to criticize about our dearly departed Harold. But what's funny is that one of my core undergraduate professors, I think I took 4 classes with him, he would continually relate a story of meeting Harold Bloom in person and finding him to be a pompous blowhard, which I have no trouble believing. But yeah, I love watching Harold Bloom interviews, his Charlie Rose interviews. We have Invention of the Human at home. We have Western Canon at home. I could just listen to that old guy all the time.
I've gone down rabbit holes with him on YouTube as well, and his lectures. It's interesting. And clearly, he's got some marvelous kind of mind where he can read that widely and remember
a true genius.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, unbelievable. And he's so cool. Just I find so much too. Because he represents that sort of, a true literary scholar, literary critic, in an almost unfathomable sense.
I don't think you'll see his like again.
No, last of his kind.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, Andrew, I wonder if we're really going to be studying literature in any sort of professional sense 100 years from now. I feel like a certain age of literary criticism is passing away. And I think part of that is the theory. I think a lot of people are becoming increasingly skeptical of it. I know I am skeptical of it. And so really, what does it mean to study literature in sort of any sort of professional sense? I think that is changing. Eclipsing.
Yeah, I remember one of his things, I think it was on a Charlie Rose from the 90s, but he would describe the great gray ocean of the internet. This was like the dawn of ubiquitous internet, or relatively ubiquitous internet, and how the human mind is not equipped to having access to all knowledge. And that a lot of people are not, and this ties back to what we were talking about at the beginning, I think, with social media, and just, the human mind is not equipped to have the capacity to having access to all of human knowledge simultaneously. It's just overwhelming.
It is truly overwhelming, which is kind of why I've taken up meditation in part, because I guess maybe I could just turn off my phone or turn off my devices, but you try to absorb everything that's going on. It's truly information overload. And I mean, that happened with me with the pandemic. I consumed far too much news, and there was this collective trauma going on. And by the end of the year, I really became ill. I got some sort of, I don't think it was COVID, but I became sick.
Yeah.
I lost weight. I did not feel well for several months. No one could figure out what was wrong with me. I think it's because I was made sick by the information overload, and I had burnout for about a year, and I think it was partly because of the pandemic. I found it very difficult to function just in terms of daily life, etc. I mean, I got through it, but it was a lot. I think it was because of information overload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, what else was there to do other than order food and read about how the world was ending?
Yeah. And that was not on my bingo card, as they say, right? No. I did not think that we were going to live through a pandemic. And it never occurred to me that something like that. Similarly here with the AI stuff, it never occurred to me that something like this was going to come down the road when I was going to graduate school in English and spending decades becoming a strong writer and reader and thinker. And now we've created this technology that can do cognitive work increasingly well. It's an analogy that I think of all the time. I think I even said it to Division a few weeks ago. But yeah, the advent of generative AI is not something that I was even capable of conceptualizing until it was here. And now, apparently writing isn't important. I was always like, everybody's always going to need English class. Yeah.
And now what's happening? So I'm glad you brought up AI, because I know everybody's tired of hearing me talk about sabbatical already, I'm sure, but my sabbatical work was just trying to figure out what to do about this existential crisis for me. And so I have started to bring, as an AI-resistant person, not as an AI evangelist person, but trying to open the door to the enemy a little bit more. But even just saying the word AI in the context of my assignments, like some of the assignments I shared at the workshop the other day, at the beginning of the semester, this was the first time that I've had essay assignments that have a deliberate, controlled, intentional AI component to them. And I felt disgusted with myself asking students to use it, even in a way that was designed to get them to assert their own command over the text instead of the AI's. And if you want to spend your entire paper refuting what the AI says, that's great. I love that for you. But yeah, it's just, it's a fraught time.
It is. Oh, it's a very fraught time in terms of AI and how we should approach it. And right now, my philosophy changes every semester. Currently, it's, for these larger writing assignments, if you want to use it, you may, but let's work on this idea of using it ethically and critically and responsibly and transparently. But I respect those students who have various problems with it. And if they don't want to use it, I say go for it. But now I'm requiring an AI use statement after my work's cited. I want to know exactly how much you've used this material. And then I would like to see the conversation logs. I would like to see the evidence. And I think the essay as we know it is dying a slow death. And maybe there's going to be more attention paid to what's going on in these chat logs, these conversation logs. So the collaboration you might undergo with one of these creatures, these alien intelligence things, in terms of shaping writing, I think we can start to increasingly maybe look at what's going on in terms of thinking and writing in those spaces. I'm not there yet, but I'm starting to realize that's where I might be going.
Yeah.
I mean, the writing process is potentially changing for everybody going forward. I totally love and respect the idea of the traditional writing process without the computers and the AI generation in terms of brainstorming and your first draft and doing it all on your own. But increasingly, I think more and more people are going to go to AI, not just for the potential ideas, but also the first draft. Now, I am not quite comfortable in saying, yeah, have it shape your first draft. But a lot of people in the, quote, real world are now doing that. And then the question is going to be, can you actually shape what it gives you? I mean, in one respect, we're getting rid of the blood, sweat, and tears that have turned so many people off to writing over the years in terms of the blank page. And now you don't have to have a blank page anymore. But then the question is, in terms of what we're doing, if you're going to allow AI to draft something first, well, then, okay, fine. But now what are we going to do with it? How will you collaborate with it? How will you critically engage with it and shape it? But I have no idea how to assess that yet. But I'm going towards that as an option. So, I mean, right now I'm trying to talk to my students about, okay, you want to be a purist and don't go for it. I'm with you. I'm totally comfortable in helping you with that and evaluating that and this and that. Or we have like the basic brainstorming little bit, moderation use, but then you go on your own. But then there's this other option, which I'm increasingly open to, which is, do you want to go all in with AI? Like, what would that look like? And how can you approach it and deal with it critically and ethically and transparently, responsibly? I'm open to going down that road with students too, but then the assessment's going to change a little bit because I think what's going on in these chat logs becomes much more important.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been, I think I've said this to you already, but I am still shocked to this day the degree, the strength of the AI resistant contingent of students. Like, this is particularly, I'm thinking of my in-person English 1020. Hi, guys. And just how disgusted they were with my new fiction paper assignment, which had a deliberate AI component in there, and how they're just slouching, just melting into the floor. But can we please do anything else? I mean, this is the first time that I've had students contact me to say, are there any other alternatives? Because I really try not to touch AI for anything. And I love that. And I never would have anticipated that there was that degree of resistance. Obviously, the AI vulnerable students didn't say anything about the assignment design. So it's still kind of hard to tell the degree to which students are AI resistant. But I think there's a much louder group of students who would prefer not to use it for anything, which I really admire.
Yeah, I totally respect that, and I think it's great, and I totally understand their concerns. And as we've been talking about it, though, I am trying to make it clear, though, that I'm committed to not being biased towards those students that want to use it in a critical and ethical and transparent way. Like, I totally respect if you don't want to touch it, and I know how to work with you because I did it for a long time. But if you want to, I'm also committed to helping you with that process and what that would look like, because I still think you need to build these basic critical thinking skills. So let's go down that road too. But I'm telling my students, I don't know that road very well, but I'll walk down that road with you. But we're going to have to figure it out together. Like, I don't have all the answers about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think some students are surprised when I'm telling them that I'm still working this stuff out, everybody. And I think it's important to be transparent about that, about what we don't know and how we're still figuring things out.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The first draft thing, I think, would be a bridge too far for me personally as a teacher, because I feel like my approach thus far, again, we're only half a semester into my post-sabbatical life, but has always been to create opportunities for students to demonstrate that they can be better than what the AI alone can do. Because I think in some capacities, we're hearing about job loss and all these things and how AI is going to remove a bunch of jobs, but also maybe in theory create a bunch of jobs, and we'll see how all that shakes out. But, I've been trying to talk about, you may find yourself in a position where you have to convince somebody to pay you a salary instead of just having ChatGPT do it for free. And how do you do that? How do you convince somebody that you can contribute something that is more valuable, more human than what any dum-dum can have ChatGPT spit out for free. It's a really existential sort of thing. So, but for me, the first draft angle, I think seems fearful because I agree that the blank page is the scariest part in a lot of ways, and certainly having ChatGPT or whomever or whatever, not whomever, whatever, spit out a first draft for you really breaks down that barrier. But, and this is the reason why I try to advocate for having a degree of your own interpretation in place before you go to research. Because a lot of times if you're stuck and you have nothing, either blank page or in terms of your interpretation, and then you read an article and you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I totally agree with that. It becomes difficult to unsee that thing. And so when you have an AI-generated first draft, I think my worry would be, how do you sufficiently tweak that draft in a way that gets you beyond it such that it's no longer ChatGPT's draft that you changed?
Well, that would be the challenge of the assignment.
Yeah.
That would be the goal that you would give them. So I'm thinking of maybe making it its own assignment, where it maybe be a quicker assignment. Like have one of these chatbots draft something for you, and then show me that you can shape it in a critical way. Mm-hmm. That would be maybe an interesting assignment to think about. But I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm open to doing that as long as we're all doing it transparently.
Yes.
And then we're working on the skills in a very transparent way.
Right.
Because otherwise, everything's going to start crumbling down. Education is going to have no purpose if just AI chatbots do your work for you. And, I mean, come on, it's crazy. So we have to be ethical about how we work with this technology. Yeah. So this AI literacy thing, I think it's going to be huge as we go forward. Huge.
Yeah, and what's kind of devastatingly challenging about it is just the infinite number of use cases. I mean, just even everything that you've described already, but there's brainstorming, there's asking it for feedback, there's having it give you something and evaluating it. There's proofreading, there's having it fabricate your work for you just whole hog and just handing that in without even thinking about it. Just an infinite number of gradations in terms of how to use these things, and how do we possibly navigate all of them in the context of a 15-week course.
Right. And the problem is these tools are becoming infused in our word processing systems. I mean, it started out in a benign enough way with the little squiggly lines that would indicate that there was a problem, and then they would start to suggest things, and then over time, I feel like in the last few years, it's all totally infused such that they're like, can I help you with this? Can I make this easier? Can we work on the tone? Blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
It's like, well, okay, well, you're being so nice about it. Sure, write the paper. Mm-hmm. But I mean, in terms of grammar, for example, I haven't spent a lot of time with Grammarly, but it appears that a lot of students are using that to polish up their work in terms of grammar. So that's an interesting question. I mean, in terms of having something point out an error to you, I mean, I don't know. Is that worth objecting to? Certainly if you can learn the rule behind it, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But then when do you cross the line from having the thing write it for you? Mm-hmm. I will say that in the last few years, fewer and fewer students are having major grammatical problems with their work. And I suppose in one respect, this is a good thing, right?
I said it to John Brammer yesterday. I mean, in theory, your work shouldn't have any errors in it. But now, work that doesn't have any errors in it is kind of automatically suspicious.
Well, that's another problem, is this issue of authenticity and how I sometimes will get work. And I will find myself wondering. And then the question is, shall we talk about this more, or shall we let this go? And do I have faith? But it's causing a crisis. It's putting strain on teacher-student relationships in the writing course environment, especially more in the online environment. I'm finding. Because I think there's a little more unethical use of AI going on online.
It's the Wild West. I almost told Joe before I came back from sabbatical, what could my schedule look like if I stopped teaching online so much? Which sucks, because I feel like I'm good at it in terms of teaching online. But there's just no way to control what they're doing.
Unfortunately, I think there's a lot more of that unethical use going on in the online environment. It's really unfortunate, and I don't know the students, and I don't like accusing people. Goodness, if I investigated every single time I thought that something maybe was inauthentic, there wouldn't be enough hours to get all my work done.
Mm-mm. I just finished yesterday. I have an online 1020 and an in-person 1020, and they both just concluded their fiction paper assignment, final draft. We're moving on to poetry. And I think I was consistently up to about half an hour per paper, grading-wise, for final drafts, which is significantly more. I I had it down to pre this AI integrated assignment. I could process a final draft in 15, 20 minutes, no problem. And it was consistently half an hour. Do you have a sense of your
Why does
grading
it take
time?
half an hour? Because they're new assignments?
I think because it's a new assignment and it's a more complex assignment because, like I said in the workshop the other day, life used to be simpler. We used to be able to just read a short story and write a paper about it and just you and the text and your writing teacher. And I feel like that's not sustainable anymore. So now there's this alien voice, as you said, and there's you and there's AI and there's the literature and there's me. And so it is a more complex task. And but I also think that the task is more complex. So instead of dancing around it. So my fiction paper involved an AI character interview, right? So pick a short story, pick a character from the short story that we read, and have your own interpretation in place, your analysis, your thesis about this character, but then ask AI to role play that character for you, and then interview that character 3 to 5 questions that are going to help you interpret the text. Always coming back to the text, right? Because the AI is just a BS artist.
Yes.
And so you can't say the AI said this, which shows how the character is blank. Because I'm going to say, well, no, because the AI character is going to say whatever it says. If what the AI character says aligns with what you think, then you have to corroborate that with the text itself, And so it's just a much heavier cognitive lift. And I always do the fiction paper first for reasons, the fiction unit first. But I think it was a huge cognitive lift for them to have this interview that they had to integrate. And again, I kept stressing over and over that, and again, I love this class, both of these groups of students, the paper is not about the interview. The paper is about your interpretation of the literature as it's always been, but you do have this alien voice. Not unlike how we all have this alien voice that is so easy to just ask any question, too. So yeah, I think the assignment is more complex. I think what they produced is more complex, which led to me needing to spend more time on it.
Yeah, I assume if you keep assigning it, maybe the time will go down per paper. But I find that I'm doing more and more different options, more creative options. I love this new one I keep doing is design either an image or create a work of art inspired by the literature that we've been looking at in this particular, genre unit or whatever, and then analyze, interpret your own work of art and connect it to the meaning of the literature. Amazing stuff people have been doing. And it's not necessarily a traditional essay of literary criticism, but it's been so rewarding, I think, for the students and for me, and the things they come up with, unbelievable. Mm-hmm. So that's very helpful. And also I'm encouraging more personal narratives inspired by the literature and that connect back your experience. So we do like the yellow wallpaper in 1020. And one of the options is tell a story from your own life when you've ripped down suffocating wallpaper and connect that experience to the meaning of the literature. Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Great stuff happens. So I do more and more of that. And I am looking to move away from the traditional essay of literary criticism. Mm-hmm. That's helpful too, and I allow that. But I think along the lines of what you're experimenting with, I think there's so many opportunities for that sort of work. And I think students will get used to what you're trying to have them do.
Yeah, I think so. I know you've always been really good about giving students choices with essays, and my choices tend to come down to topic selection, and I just tell them what the essay needs to do, but how they go about doing it is sort of entirely up to them. But yeah, I mean, essay for me, and this has been one of my takeaways, even in the wake of the sabbatical work, is that essay for me is still not a bad word, because I still feel like there is no magic bullet to it. And I'm not saying this is the right way or the wrong way. I just do feel like even now I still feel happy to sort of be one of the last bastions of the quote unquote old ways for a certain group of students. Because I still think you can't, I mean, obviously any creative act, like what you're talking about with creating a work of art or something like that, is going to have similar, hopefully, effects. But for me, I think there's just no way around the value of getting your messy, abstract ideas and feelings onto the page in a concrete way that other people can understand and learn from. But it has been great to sort of be forced into this creative mode of trying to come up with these new innovative assignments in ways that I never otherwise would have felt pressured. So I do have AI to thank for that.
Yeah, and I now ask my students, how is your project coming more than how is your essay coming? I'm becoming less interested in essays. I'm more open to them crafting projects that they're interested in, and maybe we can decide together what that's going to look like. And if it's going to leave the traditional essay format, I'm increasingly open to it.
Yeah, that's great. This is a great bridge into 1020, because I feel like you've always sort of done 2 and 2, right? 2 comms, 2 lits, more or less?
I do like maybe 3 1020s and one
Okay,
1010. Yeah,
good. Because I think of you as a literature guy, primarily. And I want to talk about, I kind of want to get into the weeds a little bit with 1020 in terms of how you do it, because it's been a long time since I've been in a literature class, and I love infrastructure and course design and like how we do things. So, like, simple questions, like how many short stories do you do in your fiction unit usually?
About 5 or 6.
5 or 6 is what I do.
Yeah, I actually spend about half the semester on fiction.
Really?
Yeah.
See, tell me about that, because I can't imagine doing half the semester on fiction.
Well, it's sort of happened naturally over the last few years. I used to try to divvy it up. Okay, we're going to do a third for fiction, a third for poetry. But fiction is, I just think it's maybe the most accessible.
Definitely.
Or just there's so many possibilities with the short stories. And I also now do an in-class fiction exam. So as a way, I suppose, to respond to the rise of AI. I mean, I used to do more in-class writing like 10, 15 years ago. And then I stopped doing that because I could see it was making students anxious. But I just think there's no way around it now. Like, I really do need to see at least 1 time or 2 times you and the blank page. I know it's scary, but what can you come up with that? So we spent a few weeks just looking at short stories and having discussions about them and emphasis on the literary elements and how they work, mainly the formalist approach. But then I introduced the other lenses. And then at the end is the idea, we're going to take there's going to be an in-class exam. So they just took that last week. And so it's sort of delayed how I do it. So, and then now we've started to work on the essay, the writing project a couple weeks ago. And so they're going to get that in the first week after spring break. So it just delayed a little bit. But in terms of infrastructure spend, just shy of half the semester.
That's so cool. I'm a huge proponent, probably too obsessively so, of symmetry. And so I still do try to divvy up the semester into equal parts fiction, poetry, and drama. But I totally agree with you that I always start with fiction because I do think it is the most accessible, because we've been reading stories and hearing stories our entire lives. Do you still have 3 papers, a fiction paper, a poetry paper, a drama paper?
But my poetry is shorter now.
Okay.
It used to be, I think you might remember this, that we'd start with like the 4 to 6 pages for fiction, 5 to 7 for poetry, 6 to 8 for drama. And then over time, I've shifted that around. And so now my final paper is, you can write about drama, but you could also it could be comparative, other texts earlier in the semester. And the poetry writing does not culminate in 5 to 7 page essay anymore. It's more of a 2 to 3 page close reading of parts of a poem. So explication of certain parts. Why is that? I think in part because I'm experimenting more with these creative projects. I've been encouraging that approach where you design a work of art inspired by it, or I also do a group presentation where groups explicate poems for the class orally. So,
no kidding. Yeah,
I'm less interested in the 5 to 7 page poetry essay right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I've already said many times in class, since starting the poetry unit, whatever it was, last week, students often struggled to come up with, quote unquote, enough things to say in the poetry paper because the poems are so economical.
Yeah, and I always would say with explication, I want you to make a lot out of a little, and if you can do this right, you're going to find that 5 to 7 pages is not enough when you're even talking about a shorter poem. And it was great when I would see that light bulb go off for students when they realize, oh wow, I really do have a lot to say about that. Yeah. But I think you can practice the skill of explication in different ways without having to write a 5 to 7 page essay on it.
Yeah, definitely. I say you can spend a paragraph on the 3 different connotations of this particular word in the poem and how that enhances your understanding of the poem. What does a fiction exam look like for you?
It's short answer, and I'll give like a couple quotes, and I'll just say, examine symbolism and irony in this quote and connect it to a larger theme. And they have their hands full with that. That's a good, I think, intellectual challenge. So analysis when you see how something is put together and you figure out how the different components work. That's an important skill to have. And so in the world of literature, we can do that with literary elements. So I give a few quotes and I'll say, examine X and Y elements and connect it to a larger idea. That, to me, that's the most important skill for the fiction essay. So you can do different approaches. You could do historical approach or even psychological. I ask them, and they can bring in theories or ideas from psychology. That's how we approach that. But many of them are kind of formalist, just looking at the text. And the main skill is, can you make connections between what's going on in terms of the particulars of the text, mainly through the literary elements, irony, character, plot, et cetera, to these larger thematic ideas? Yeah. And a lot of students struggle with creating theme out of the smaller elements. And that's an important skill. So I keep saying, not only do you need to do that in your thesis, but in your body paragraphs, what I say, what's the mini theme of this body paragraph or section? Can you connect a specific example in the story through maybe an element or something that happens in the story to a thematic idea that supports the big theme in the thesis? We have our hands full in terms of what we're doing intellectually with that. So the exam asks you to do that kind of work, and I think that's the most important work with the fiction unit.
Yeah.
And then you can write a longer paper, but I think, short paragraph or two, whether you're doing it in class or a shorter assignment that you might prepare in part outside of class, as long as you're working on the skills, I don't think you necessarily need to have a finished essay to do it all the time.
The only in-class writing that I did, because I said in my workshop that one of the things I deliberately did not do was shift to all in-class writing, because I think you're right that is one of the only true ways to truly ensure that the students are doing their work authentically. And my friend Joe Finkel, who chairs the Barnes Seminar and teaches at Nuntuck, I think spent his winter break researching a lot of scholarship behind in-class writing and has moved almost entirely into class writing. And I haven't heard exactly how it's going. I think it initially started going well. I'm not sure if it still has. But yeah, to me, that never felt exciting to go to the classroom and watch my students write. Right. And I also agree with you that I feel like it can't be a source of anxiety for a lot of students. Like, you have to be prepared to be smart at this particular point in time, and everybody else around you seems to know exactly what they're doing, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, so I try to deal with that by just indicating I don't expect it to be completely polished. Mm-hmm. And I try to make it such that you can do it in an hour and 15 minutes. And I really am just looking for the intellectual work. I really want to see, can you look at what a symbolic, what might be a symbol in this quote that I'm giving you, and how might there be some irony going on in this quote, and can you connect those ideas to a larger idea? That's important.
Right.
And it doesn't need to be wonderful, polished language to do that. But the intellectual work, that's important too.
Yes. What I do, the only in-class writing that I added was, I used to do this online via discussion board, which was terrible because discussion boards are terrible. But to ensure students did the reading is I'm doing what's called quote notes. So we start class, say we had to read this short story for this day, right? And I start class by open book but device free, right? And I hand out a handout that has just mostly blank lines, but a juicy quote from the story on one side and a different quote from the story on the other side. And I say, pick one of those, and you're just going to respond to that quote, significance to the larger story and its larger themes for 10 minutes. And that's how we start most classes. And that has been, I feel like they've really sort of started to hit their stride with it. At first, I think of the first story that I taught this semester was too difficult to use as the first story, it turned out. I picked it because it was the shortest, but that's been really rewarding. And what's been rewarding, especially for me, and I was shocked about this, is how pleasurable I found it to grade those handwritten assignments by hand, which I hadn't done in years because I had been collecting and grading everything digitally since the pandemic. Right. But just having a handwritten thing and getting to write in my own voice in the margins, I just found unbelievably pleasurable.
And
I couldn't believe it.
That's low-stakes writing that they're producing at the beginning of class?
2 points each.
I think the low-stakes writing that they do in class is great. And it's a great way you can give feedback as you go. And I've been doing that more and more. I planned to do it a couple of weeks ago, but the whole week was snowed out. So
yeah.
we were going to do a lot of that in class.
Yeah, that really cramped my style.
But I like the low-stakes pre-writing that I'm happy to give full credit if you do it in class or otherwise. I think that's important.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Do you have infrastructure in place to ensure that students do the reading?
Like give a pop quiz, you mean?
Well, just how do you? So, like my because I think back to my literature courses, and they still are mostly. I remember my literature courses were mostly the professor asking us what were our reactions to the text, and then it goes wherever it goes.
Right.
And all my literature classes are very discussion based, very decentered in that regard, but. I know, and I tell them, like, I know when you have a lab report and a math test and an exam for sociology, that reading a story for English class is probably not going to happen. So I always try to have a tiny graded component in place to ensure they do the reading.
Like for in class to check that they've done the reading?
Yeah, well, like I used to do the quote posts online that they had to be posted before class, just as a couple of points. And now I do it the first 10 minutes in class.
Right. I love that idea. I think I might want to try that myself. I find that when they know the fiction exam is coming in week, whatever it is, 4 or 5, that they're doing the reading, because I say the way to prepare for the fiction exam is you come to class and you're able to participate in the discussion. So I'm able to keep their attention for the first few weeks having these discussions about the text. And it works well. I can't do that the whole semester. It's not sustainable. But I think it's important to give these environments where you can have a class discussion about a text in a very in-depth way. I think that's an important skill to work on. And I think both of us had that in our undergraduates. Yeah. And I think a lot of students want that. And so we can provide that to a degree, but then I think over the course of 3 months, you need to incorporate other activities as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because again, and this is what is such a struggle for me about teaching 1020 online, especially, is that the move from live discussion of literature to asynchronous discussion of literature is so challenging and difficult. You do 1020 online, right?
I do.
Yeah, and it's hard to capture the magic, I feel like.
Oh yeah, it is. especially with the AI problem now online that we were talking about. So it's funny, online, I feel like 5 years ago, online was the wave of the future and where things are going. And now we need to catch up. We need to change what's going on online, because I agree that the discussion boards online aren't quite doing what they used to do.
No, I don't want to read them, and I assign them.
Right.
It's tough. We don't need to. I know we're bumping up against time, and I don't want to keep you, but yeah, it's just so challenging to capture the magic. The discussion is so important, and I feel like there's no way around it, because discussing it is how we get to a deeper understanding of it, because other people notice things and are aware of things that you weren't aware of, and it forces you to stack your own interpretation against what somebody else says, and that either affirms what you think or it opens you up to a different perspective.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen, Andrew, is I think these, what do they call them, LMS systems or the Blackboard, I think I have a feeling they're going to create partnerships with AI companies, and they're going to start integrating them into the online learning environment, and it's going to change how we do things online, for better or worse.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're going to maybe create tutors. I think that they're going to have us train AI tutors. We're going to probably train these AI chatbots to create doubles of ourselves that can be available 24/7.
Okay.
I don't know where this is going, but
I don't want to end on that note. I have one more question, then I will get to your recommendation, then I'll let you go. Could do a whole part 2, but one of the most challenging things about 1020 for me has always been trying to figure out the degree to which and how much writing instruction they need, because they're ostensibly coming from 1010, and I always present 1020 as a sequel to 1010, thesis-driven analysis, examination of evidence, interpretation, et cetera, et cetera. But, because not every 1020 student had me for 1010. And so it's always difficult for me to know how much writing instruction they need and how much time to spend on it. And we could easily not talk about writing instruction at all and just talk about the readings, just discuss the readings.
Oh, in 1020.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you integrate writing instruction into your 1020? Do you have a way of doing that? Do you have a sense of a way of assessing how much this particular group of 1020 students needs a refresher on how does an essay get organized, or how does a larger assignment get organized?
Yeah, that's what's tricky thing about the course, isn't it? Because you really need to spend quite a bit of time with the intro to lit part, just making sure everyone's on the same page and doing the textual analysis, and I think those are really important skills, more so than ever. So the critical thinking. In terms of writing instruction, it's happening now more in the last 2/3 of the class. Maybe the first third is more discussion based or thinking about the text or intro to lit, and then more and more writing instruction. In terms of how I do writing instruction, so I used to love collecting sample essays from students and putting them up and distributing them, and then we would, as a class, critique one or two over the course of the semester. That was wonderful. That was really helpful.
One of my favorite days.
Yeah. I'm not doing that these days. And I think it's because of the rise of AI, because how this is affecting writing and the writing process, it makes me concerned about what I'm putting up to model and to critique. And so this issue of authenticity is affecting what we're doing in terms of the writing instruction. But how I really value individual conferences. I mean, I think the most important for me, the most valuable, is when I can sit down one-on-one with students and talk about their projects, talk about their drafts, where they're going. So that's how I learned to write. I mean, my father taught me how to write. I mean, I would sit down with him, he'd get the red pen out, my English papers, and we would go line by line. And I don't go line by line necessarily with all my students, but it's really helpful to have someone give you feedback in person about their projects.
Yep.
And I try to give some class time for it. I can't do as much as I would like,
right,
because there's too many students in these classes. But that's where I go with that. And then, we do peer and instructor review days where I try to give them different ways that they can do the peer review now. So sometimes I give them an option. You can come to class and participate in person, and I'll be there. If you want feedback from me, I'm there. Or you could choose to do it fully online. So I do that like twice a semester, and I think students appreciate that option. You're doing the in-person, but maybe a few times in the semester, you can choose whether you're coming in class or doing it fully online. So I try to give up different opportunities for them to connect with each other in their writing. And then, that's kind of how I do it.
That's great. I feel like we're really aligned, which is heartening for me. I mean, different versions of those things, of course. But yeah, we lost our rough draft show and tell day to the snow day, which for me was a huge loss because the students didn't see one of the values of that, of discussing people's drafts on the overhead, is that students get to see another person's work in the real. It just doesn't become this abstract thing that they're wrestling with. They get to see, so everybody is doing the same thing. We're all working on the same challenges and that kind of stuff. So I think that was a huge loss to lose that rough draft
for the snow day,
show and tell day, to the snow day.
But you still do that you distribute.
Yeah, it's the rough draft is the version that I share, that I have them share. And again, we only get to like 2 people.
You ask for volunteers ahead of time?
Yep, I ask for volunteers. I give them a bonus point on their rough draft if they have the courage to share their in-progress work.
Oh, good. I think it's important to do that in the early draft stage.
Yeah, exactly. Because we only get to like the intro and a body paragraph at most, and then we want to move on.
Yeah, I've done that in 1020. I'd still do that in 1010. And I ask for volunteers to share what they have. I think it's important to share your writing in its early draft form. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing that as much in 1020 right now, and I think it's because I'm doing more of the intro to lit stuff, and I got this new exam that I do, but I need to get back to that because it's so important.
Yeah, and I'm a huge conference guy too. Do you? I do it at the very beginning of the process with a proposal, like what's your idea, and pitch me on that. Are your conferences, are there multiple conferences per project, or do they happen sort of in the middle of things? Or?
So I require now you have to meet for one conference with me over the course of the semester.
Okay,
and you choose which one it's going to be. So I give 2 class periods for the fiction essay, 1 for the poetry, and 2 for the final. So it's sprinkled over the course of the semester, and they sign up on a Google Doc, and of course you're welcome to meet with me outside of class, or I can check in with you during those peer and instructor review days. But that's been working pretty well. I mean, at the time, I can't give class time for a conference for every single paper because then we would never meet as a class.
Right.
But I feel comfortable giving 5 class periods, 2 conferences. That's where I am.
There you go. I cancel 3 classes for conferences, 1 for fiction, 1 for poetry, 1 for drama. But yeah, you can only do 7 people, 7 10-minute conferences in a 75-minute class period.
Yeah, I do 15 minutes. So I give it because I say we just get to, and it's an opportunity to get to know my students and talk about other things that might come up. So I value them. But yeah, I only have time for 1 a semester. during class.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I love the conferences. Todd, I could keep going with you for a whole nother hour. Thank you so much for your time. This has been wonderful. We always end the show with a recommendation for the listeners, and this could be literally anything, a piece of media that you consumed recently, or a way of thinking, or a study habit, or really anything, any parting words that you'd like to leave with the listeners.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today, Andrew. My recommendation would be, if you like jerk chicken, the best jerk chicken around, nice and spicy, would be at Mommy's Caribbean Food. If you go around the corner, it's a little down from Wendy's. I think it's next to the walk-in clinic. Mommy's Caribbean Food. It's like maybe Haitian, Caribbean food. Amazing food, but best jerk chicken you're ever going to have this part of Connecticut.
Well, there you go. That's amazing. I wish I had. That's not true because everybody has great recommendations, but nobody has like a recommendation like that in terms of like they're just their favorite restaurant nearby, which is funny because I remember when you and I, shortly after you and I first met, I feel like we had one English 1010 task force meeting at Mazu Sushi.
Oh, yes.
Right here next to campus. And I remember you were always a proponent of the Mazu sushi. And
yes, they're great.
I think you're why we started going there. Once we moved to Lyme, we needed a new sushi place. And I drive half an hour to pick up sushi and half an hour to go home because of how good Mazu is.
Oh, you drive up to Mazu? Wow.
Yeah.
There's not a good sushi near you?
There are, but Mazu's been our favorite that we've found so far.
It is very good. I don't know if they still do the all-you-can-eat Sundays.
I don't know,
is that still... Yeah.
When we lived in Farmington, Tokyo Southington had all you can eat all the time, and oh my gosh! But no, we don't indulge dietarily on Sundays as a general rule. So we very rarely. I don't think we've ever actually had the all you can eat sushi Sunday at Mazu, but it's good to know it's still there.
Yeah. They might have discontinued it, but I think it was always a treat when I did it.
Yeah, no doubt. Todd, thank you so much. This was terrific. And thank you, everybody, very much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please tell somebody else to listen to it. That helps us out a lot. And until next time, thanks.
Thank you.
How'd that feel?
That was great. Thank you. You made it painless.
Well, so I'm so glad. It was so great. You never know how it's going to go. And like, you think you're excited about it, but then like, you never, because you're an uncontrolled entity, right? I have no idea what you're going to say or what you're going to say stuff that I was going to ask about. And now I don't need those questions, you know? But no, it was so, it was really, really enjoyable. Cause again, I don't get to nerd out about the literature stuff.
I'll just say, I was thinking this morning, I was like, I'm just going to have a nice intimate chat with Andrew. But then it occurred to me, it's an intimate chat, but really anybody could be listening in terms of the audience, or it then makes you, I didn't want to censor myself too much, but it's truly, it's a public genre. In an interesting way.
Yeah, and I don't look at the numbers, so I have no idea how many people actually listen to the show. It could be 3. But no, it comes back to the Sondheim thing. Like, yes, I do want it to sound like an intimate and natural conversation. I think we did a great job in that regard. But yeah, it is also an artificial environment with the microphones and being recorded, and it starts and stops, and it is a show of sorts.
Yeah.
But no, it was painless. I agree.
It was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.